looking ahead to the 2024 class. That's right, you guys. We talked about it all day long about tying that proverbial bow on the 2023 class. So let's go ahead and look ahead to what's coming down the block in the next cycle. And how about the #1 class in 2024? The Georgia Bulldogs adding to their already great arsenal with Ellis Robinson committing today. But Steve, he is just one of many great prospects already in this Dogs class.
Yeah, he joins the #1 tight end in the country, Landon Thomas. Peyton Woodward and Jalen Hayward were two of the most coveted defensive backs in America. And DeMarcus Riddick is one of the top linebackers in the country. Those are 24/7 Sports consensus top 50 recruits right off the bat. We haven't even got to Dwight Phillips and his 4.2 speed as a running back. He's maybe the fastest player in the class early on. And then Nye Carr is a dynamic receiver. Landon Thomas's high school teammate there at Colquitt County. Georgia's off and running, as they should be. 2 straight national championships with a chance to add guys like Dylan Raiola, the #1 linebacker in the country, Sammy Brown, the #1 safety in the country who could also play receiver, KJ Bolden. There's a lot of elite players that are looking extremely hard at Georgia early in the cycle. But there's programs like Clemson and Ohio State trying to change those guys' minds.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up, right? We talked about Alabama and their class, Caleb Downs, Justice Haynes. Those are guys that Kirby Smart targeted very hard from the jump. They end up signing with Alabama. Now you look at KJ Bolden, Mike Matthews, Sammy Brown. Those guys are all in Georgia's backyard. Georgia's just won back-to-back national titles, right? Can they get these guys through? That's something I'm keeping an eye on as we look towards the next 12 months. And then I just think Georgia does an excellent job of making some evaluations. And they got a massive recruiting department there. They're on guys early. They have a national championship parade. Bunch of kids on campus, had a bunch of kids on campus this past weekend. I had a contact text me, what was it like? Oh, great vibe. And then, they just go on and add playmaker after playmaker. I mean, Georgia's recruiting nationally. They're resonating with the big dogs on both sides of the ball. So you said it, Steve, they could have the best class ever, when we're sitting here 11 months, 10 months from now, whenever it is during the early signing period.
Yeah, you saw that graphic already. 6 players in the top 100, a part of this Bulldogs class, and we still have 11 months to go until those guys put pen to paper. A very exciting class building for Georgia. But how about Florida State? You talk about all the momentum that Georgia's got with the back-to-back national championships. Well, Mike Norvell's doing something down in Seminole country there. So what is it about Florida State and their 2024 class, #3 right now? What stands out to you early on, Andrew?
They've been aggressive, and they're getting commitments, and they're getting commitments from guys that believe in Mike Norvell and his vision. Luke Kromanoke, the quarterback that they have a commitment from. Mike Norvell took his commitment, and he had never even started a varsity game. Since then, he's picked up a ton of scholarship offers, Florida, Penn State, Tennessee. Everyone seems to be looking at Luke Kromanoke. We're very high in our rankings. I think the class starts with him. Cam Davis, the running back. Think Maurice Jones-Drew in terms of build. He's on the shorter side, but he's a stocky guy. Saw him playing 7-on-7 this past weekend. He caught everything out of the backfield. He's dynamic in the open field, and he plays quarterback on Friday nights. So Florida State off to a hot start. I want to see what they do in South Florida this cycle. They just hired Pat Surtain, who is kind of a legend down in South Florida, former head coach at American Heritage. They want to make some noise there. They've worked satellite camps consistently at FIU, started to win some battles this year. Hakeem Williams, Conrad Hussey, they're the team that's kind of sitting at the top of the Big 3 rankings. Will it translate in 2024 when it comes to the recruiting rankings?
As they try and make that next move, they won 10 games this year. They beat LSU to start the season. Top 10 offense, top 15 defense. They need more dynamic guys that can change the course of a game with one touch of the football. Hakeem Williams is potentially that in 2023, but in 2024 they have Cameron Davis committed out of Albany, Georgia. His skill set kind of reminds me of Cam Akers, and then they have 2 receivers that I think are guys that are threats to score at any time they touch the football, and Camden Fryer and Tawaski Abrams. Those guys are elusive, quick, and then they can really run when they get in space. So this is a class that I think has some special skill talent in it already. And then, as Andrew alluded to there, Luke Kromanoke, he's a guy that impressed us this fall with the season he had and the traits that he's bringing to the table. I think he's a guy that could be a franchise caliber passer for Mike Norvell down the road.
All right, people in the chat here are clamoring for some Notre Dame talk. I didn't tell them that we're about to talk about Notre Dame, but how about it? We already have it planned out here. Marcus Freeman, we saw what he did with his first full official class. Looking ahead, though, to 2024, What stands out to you early on as Marcus Freeman looks to build his second official class, Steve?
Well, I think the thing that kind of stands out to me the most about Marcus Freeman is recruiting efforts as the head coach compared to when he was an assistant coach, because he was an electric recruiter at Cincinnati, and then obviously it showed up more in the mainstream at Notre Dame. Notre Dame will be looking for their fourth straight top 10 recruiting class in 2024. They're at number 4 right now, but it's the way that they've recruited quarterback under Marcus Freeman compared to the previous regime, because look, Brian Kelly at Notre Dame had the Irish on the cusp several times. They played in a national title game. They've been to several college football playoffs. They've been to several other New Year's Six games. But I always thought they just left a little extra squeeze on the trail at the quarterback position, where Marcus Freeman, look, they were in the mix for Dante Moore. They were in the mix collectively for Jackson Arnold. But they end up getting Kenny Minchey, who I think is one of the more talented quarterbacks in the class, at one point committed to Pitt. He won the Pro Day competition at the Elite 11 finals, throwing against the best arms in the country. And that's a competition where you're making a variety of throws in a pressure situation all the way down the throw. And he rose to the occasion that evening and won that competition. And then CJ Carr, one of the most heavily recruited players early in the cycle at the position. He was a guy that Georgia targeted and what it took. Obviously, his grandfather's Lloyd Carr, Michigan, coveted him. Michigan State was in early, but Notre Dame, his relationship with Tom Rees, his belief in Marcus Freeman and the trajectory of that program, he wants to get a little bit away from home. He didn't want to go to college 10 minutes down the road at the University of Michigan, but Notre Dame's just far enough, but he just fell in love with the campus, and I'm starting to fall in love again with Notre Dame's quarterback room, which I thought was maybe lacking a little bit when you compare it to the other rooms that were stocked full of NFL talent.
For me, it's CJ Carr. I'm a big fan of him. I think I'm a little bit more of a fan than some of the other people on our rankings team, but I've seen him throw. I think he's got the prototypical frame. Steve brought it up. I mean, he could have went to Michigan. It would have made a ton of sense to go to Michigan, and Tommy Rees gets him locked up. I think he could win games. I like him a little bit more than Kenny Minchey. I like Kenny Minchey, but I view CJ Carr as the quarterback of the future. And Steve, we had this conversation yesterday talking about Justin Scott, the top 100 defensive lineman. He pushes back his announcement date. You still have the crystal ball in right there for the Irish. I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, I want him to go take his visits, go check things out. The last thing you want is exactly what happened with Keon Keeley, right? Kid commits early, all of a sudden he starts taking visits, the SEC comes calling, and then you lose him at the buzzer, right? Fight that one to the end. Don't get him in the boat now and then just think it's a done deal, right? So to me, Justin Scott is the recruitment that I'm tracking.
Well, that's the most pivotal recruit left on the board for the Irish.